Hello, good afternoon. This is the Midday News. The news is live on Joy 99.7 in Accra, Love 99.5 in Kumasi. Affiliates across Ghana's 16 regions, including Ganga FM Drapa, Flow FM Aplawo, Jubilee FM and Sun City Radio Keta, ATL FM Cape Coast, Radio Max Takrady and Pad FM Damongo. We are live on Facebook live stream and my Joy Online interactive app. The Midday News is sponsored by Petrosol, your clean fuel in full quantity. Petrosol, always a delightful experience. And Plus Ghana Limited, producers of quality PVC pipes and water tank. Where Duraplus goes, water flows. Coming up, Ghana makes a passionate appeal to the World Bank and the IMF for concessionary loans to revive the ailing economy as private sector funding dries up.
It's a major item on the agenda for us because ultimately, whatever reforms we're doing now, if we don't attempt to reform the way the market responds to our needs, it's going to be very difficult to have a sustainable debt profile for all our various countries.
Also, top banks in Ghana post first loss as nation restructures debt.
This has been worsened by the domestic debt exit program. Why? Because most of the banks heavily invested in government instruments which have not performed as predicted, and that has reflected in some of the losses that the banks are reporting.
We'll explore the implications of this on the economy. Also, government comes under intense pressure to get fight against illegal mining back on track as SRAJ begins its initial assessment of whether to mount a full-scale probe into the Professor Frimpong Boateng Galamsey report.
The water quality in the Ankobra and the level of heavy metals that are in that. The president didn't and doesn't care about Galamsey and all the consequences that we are talking about, because I believe if he cared, we wouldn't be where we are at the moment.
Details in a moment, plus 11 million non-compliant SIM cards to be deactivated by the 31st of May this year by the National Communications Authority.
If you are part of this 11 million and you are not exempted, you are not a foreign diplomat, you are not a refugee, you will be delinked if you do not register.
And in sports,
Ghana's Thomas Partey expresses optimism ahead of the big clash against title-chasing Manchester City.
And as Council of State considers request by President Akufo-Addo to advise on the nomination of Justice Gertrude Tokonu, we look back at some notable cases she's participated in, plus her views on issues of corruption and dressing to the courts.
So it's prevalent social behavior, and we all have to discuss it and accept that it's not helpful.
I wish we could even wear African print rather than black suit.
More as former Attorney General Aiko describes her as a judge with great temperament and outlines what he expects of her in terms of legal education in Ghana.
Well, as lawyers, we follow principles. So I'm sure that the president will be there to guide her. It is for her to decide on her own whether she wants to follow the president or break away from the president.
We've got details of these and more here on the Midday News with me, Bernice Abu-Baidoo Lansah. Thanks for choosing us. This is Joy News, independent, fearless and credible. It's a pleasure to have you here. The details now. Ghana has appealed to the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund for concessionary loans to revive the economy. The facility is a loan made on more favorable terms than the borrower could obtain in the marketplace. The concessional terms may be one or more of the following: a lower interest rate or deferred payments. Interacting with the Visiting Director General of the World Trade Organization, President Akufo-Addo said the state of Ghana's economy makes it difficult to go to the capital market to borrow. He wants the Bretton Woods institution to act in the interest of struggling economies.
I think that the thrust, which is as much as possible to see the extent to which the other organizations, IMF and the World Bank, can lead in trying to expand access to concessional financing, is a major item on the agenda for us, because ultimately whatever reforms we're doing now, if we don't attempt to reform the way the market responds to our needs, it's going to be very difficult to have a sustainable debt profile for all our various countries. I think that is an area, the Central Bank of Ghana, all of them are making big efforts to bring that to the center of the discussion, the global discussion. And I think it is the right way for us to go. We ourselves, of course, as a prelude to the fund program, are having to make all kinds of adjustments around debt profile in order to put it on a more sustainable basis going forward. But it's an area where we believe that the solution cannot just be at a national, even regional, it has to be at a global level. We have to look at it. And I think the desire, the increasing insistence that the Bretton Woods bodies, the IMF and the World Bank, also change the way they do business and see themselves much more as people at the forefront of mobilizing capital. Because you look at all the statistics as to what exists for public finance and what is available in terms of private finance. The private is in trillions compared to what there is in the public sphere.
President Akufo-Addo there. On her part, Director General of the World Trade Organization, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, says struggling economies, especially those in Africa, must relook at how they've been conducting their affairs.
But we are also urging at the WTO that we do something we call re-globalization, that we use this opportunity, if we want to build resilience in certain global supply chains, to look at other countries, other developing countries as also possible places where manufacturing can take place. And so that it's not only concentrated in certain countries, whether developed or emerging markets. And I think these are some of the things that Ghana is a much loved country. And I think your ability to attract investment should be something very important for you to talk to several of these global supply chains to see if they can also consider Ghana, West Africa as a possible destination. And the pharmaceutical is one that is important, but there are also other possibilities. In that regard, at the WTO, we are pursuing an investment facilitation agreement. 112 countries are negotiating an investment facilitation agreement to do away with all the things in the way of investment in our countries.
You just heard Director General of the World Trade Organization, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. Let's stay a while on the economy because Ghana's move to restructure its local currency and overseas debt has resulted in the first loss on record for two of the nation's top banks. The Ghana Commercial Bank PLC, the country's largest lender by assets, posted a 593.4 million cedi net loss for the year to end December. Its first since 1993. Standard Chartered Bank Ghana Limited, the biggest by market value, also reported a loss of 297.8 million cedis. According to Joy Business's calculations, banks operating in Ghana have taken a hit of about $1.4 billion as the country restructures most of its public debt, estimated at 576 billion cedis. There's more in this News Desk report.
According to the Bank of Ghana, derecognition losses emanating from the domestic debt exchange program will be spread equally over a period of 4 years, effective 2022, for the purposes of capital adequacy ratio computation. The International Financial Reporting Standard states that derecognition refers to the removal of an asset or liability from an entity's balance sheet. Due to the impact of the DDEP on the banks, the Bank of Ghana announced some policy and regulatory reliefs for banks that fully participated in a debt exchange to reduce the effect on their operations. These policy and regulatory reliefs were informed by stress tests on banks that reviewed the potential impact of the exchange on banks' solvency, liquidity, and profitability. Meanwhile, information reaching Joy Business indicates that the banks recorded more than 10 billion cedis loss in 2022. This is as a result of the impact of the DDEP on their operations. The Bank of Ghana, in its January monetary policy report, said banks operating in Ghana wrote off about 5.9 billion cedis as bad debt in December 2022. However, this was initially underestimated.
That was a News Desk report. Now let's break it down a bit more. Joy Business editor Nixon Yeboah joins me for more on this. Nixon, what does this mean for a depositor and the general economy?
Well, let me first say that in terms of safety and soundness of the banking industry, we should be rest assured that the regulator is doing everything possible to ensure there is stability. Unfortunately, over the years, banks have done more investment in government securities and never prioritize the risk exposure to the government of Ghana. As we speak now, due to the debt exchange, banks have been hit severely because they have to then realign some of their portfolio, and that is the situation whereby we are currently. If you look clearly at the balance sheet of the banks, they have done significant impairment on their books, and that has led to significant losses on their part. We all remember the debt exchange led to a reduction in coupon payments or coupon rates, let me put it in that way, as well as maturity period. Government of Ghana indicated that it does not have the capacity to repay these coupons as well as principal.
Sorry to interject. I appreciate the assurance that you're giving us. But for me as a depositor, does this mean that when I go to the bank, I'm likely going to be turned away, or things don't point to that direction?
Absolutely no. As a depositor, I can say that based on their financials, you would be able to secure your deposit. However, the banks would have to realign some of their business. They have to look at certain areas where they could do financial intermediation. They have to reduce their exposure to government of Ghana securities, and that is where the concern is.
Hey, Nixon. Yes, sorry. We are also just learning that Fitch Ratings has lowered the nation's long-term local currency issuer default rating to restricted default from CCC. Now, this action was taken due to missed payments on certain local currency bonds issued before. That's way before the domestic debt exchange program. Now, what does this mean?
Well, we all know that we're supposed to do some payments, coupon payments, and principal in the month of April. This month, we were not in the capacity to pay. We all know that ending of last year, the government of Ghana said it wasn't in the capacity to pay, particularly external debt. So this led to the downgrade of our capacity to borrow on the international market. We thank God that the World Bank, in terms of the 2030 Eurobond, the World Bank came in to pay the guarantee payments on behalf of the government of Ghana. So at this stage, the government of Ghana, or let me say that the country does not have the capacity to go to the international market to borrow because of the kind of situation we find ourselves.
That's Joy Business editor Nixon Yeboah there. Meanwhile, a senior finance lecturer at the University of Ghana Business School, Dr. Benjamin Amo, says the latest development puts a lot of pressure on the banking industry. He spoke to Joy Business's Pius Baka.
All right, so joining us via Zoom for his perspective.
Reporting some of this bad performance for this particular year. Maybe hopefully even next year, because we are still not at the end of this challenge that we currently face.
In your view, do you think that banks are in the capacity to shore up their capital following the domestic debt exchange program?
Banks will have to, because even before the domestic debt exchange program, if you look at the exchange rates and the way the exchange rate has really, been highly unstable and very weak for the cedi, and clearly look at the fact that in 2018, the recapitalization of 400 million was in an equivalent of about $83 million. As we speak now, if you just do a one-on-one match of the US dollar against the 400 million that we are currently operating with, it's about $40 million.
You heard senior finance lecturer at the University of Ghana Business School, Dr. Benjamin Amos, speaking to Joy Business's Pius Baka. You're listening to the Midday News here on Joy 99.7 FM. Let's do some other stories now. Well, the president made a pledge 5 years ago, putting his presidency on the line in the fight against illegal mining.
This is somebody from the belly of the whale, who...
I am prepared to put my presidency on the line on this matter. I've heard it being said that I should be careful. This is a choice that all of us have to make as human beings. You do what you think is right, or do you do what you think will allow you to get along?
So that was 5 years ago, but Ghana's water bodies continued to be destroyed by illegal miners, with some forest reserves almost becoming bare. Well, analysts say the verdict is a failed fight. And their evidence is Professor Frimpong Boateng's Galamsey report, which highlights deep political interest that they say makes the entire quest just a mirage. This afternoon, government is under intense pressure from civil society organizations to get the fight back on track to save the nation. Listen to convener of the Media Coalition Against Illegal Mining, Dr. Kenneth Ashigbe.
This is somebody from the belly of the whale, who has made very major revelations, and we've not really seen any movement to this particular one. And if you look at some of the current data from the theater of the illegality, it's the impunity is continuing. I've chanced upon some report on the water quality in the Ankobra, and the level of heavy metals that are in that.
Dr. Kenneth Ashigbe is convener of the Media Coalition Against Illegal Mining. The Executive Secretary of the Media Foundation for West Africa, Suleiman Abrahama, he says if government was actually concerned, it will be taking serious steps to get the fight back on track.
I think that the real conclusion one can draw is that, look, the president didn't and doesn't care about Galamsey and all the consequences that we are talking about. Because I believe if he cared, and he cares, we wouldn't be where we are at the moment. You see, we are talking about a very, very serious national problem. And the office of the president would want to trivialize it by, pandering to issues of how letters should be written, transmittal, whatever reference numbers, and so on and so forth. It's almost like somebody going to the police to report to the police that, look, there's this crime going on, and I think it has to be investigated. And then we all witness the crime indeed happening, and the police then tells us that, look, the person who came to make the complaint didn't write a formal report, didn't, go through the appropriate channels.
That was Executive Secretary of the Media Foundation for West Africa. Meanwhile, Secretary of the defunct Interministerial Committee on Illegal Mining, Charles Bissiou, has revealed that one of the companies named in the Professor Frimpong Boateng report was slapped with a $12,000 fine for illegal mining. Professor Frimpong Boateng claims the company was engaged in an illegality, and the president's cousin, Gabi Asare-Otredako, had contacted him to intervene. Listen to Charles Bissiou.
See, Heritage Imperial. We went there on the 10th of December. 11th of December, that's when they applied for EPA.
So they didn't have the required documentation
they did not have
to
EPA.
Be where they were and what they were doing.
They did not have EPA license.
So that is a corroboration of what Frimpong Boateng had said in this report, is it not? As far as this company is concerned.
Exactly.
That they were actually acting and operating illegally in the forest.
Illegally, yes, exactly. A person that we all know in this country calling and then a newspaper attacking the committee. And then a phone call is placed. And then committee sends the secretary to go there. We see that they are actually mining illegally. The day on the 10th of December that we raided that concession, then they apply for EPA on the 11th. Subsequent to that, EPA writes to them and fine them $12,000.
You heard Charles Bisu speaking to Evan Spencer there on PM Express. Charles Bisu is the secretary of the defunct Interministerial Committee on Illegal Mining. Meanwhile, Shah says it's commenced an initial assessment of a petition which was submitted by a Member of Parliament for South Dai calling for investigations into allegations of corruption against top government officials and allies involved in illegal mining. Now, if your SIM is unregistered, you have up until the end of May 2023 to do so, or else your card will be totally deactivated. Director General of the National Communications Authority, Joe Anoche, at a news briefing earlier today, revealed that a little over 6 million SIM cards have been deactivated from the database owing to the failure of owners to verify their cards biometrically. Now, many Ghanaians have lamented the high-handedness of the regulator in enforcing the Ghana card registration regime when millions of people are not in possession of their cards. Reacting to the concerns, Joe Anoche says the only way to avoid a deactivation is if you can prove that you genuinely do not have a Ghana card.
Based on the statistics that we showed earlier, there are about 11 million active unregistered SIMs. Now, who do these SIMs belong? They belong to exempted SIMs from Ghanaians on national duties outside Ghana, foreign diplomats, refugees. So Ghanaians on active duties outside Ghana, foreign diplomats have been exempted. But there's also recalcitrant subscribers who have Ghana cards but have refused to register. In fact, there's a lot more of them. Some subscribers who have registered, some but not all SIMs.
That's Director General of the National Communications Authority, Joe Anoche. My colleague Blessed Suga was at that press conference and joins us with more. Blessed, what more did Mr. Anoche say about the delinking exercise?
Well, so the NTA explains that the exercise must come to an end at some point, and that's why, after so many timelines being given, the resolution now is that by the end of next month, if you do not have the Ghana card to link your SIM card to, then you risk deactivation, except that you would have to prove. They've also been giving updates on the total number of persons who've made it through in terms of the registration, which is now representing some 69.9%. However, there are concerns also and reports earlier that the database of the NTA was breached. Joe Anoche denies these claims.
And Blessed, finally on the suspension of the MTN data zone, which has been very topical, a lot of subscribers have been complaining about that. What explanation did he offer?
So it appears that the telecommunication network, MTN, being referred to by the NTA, is now the largest market holder. They control a significant population, a reason for which the directive has been given to them to try and readjust their zone bundles to reflect what it is that will be considered as fair for other players in the market, a reason for which this decision has been taken.
Blessed Suga there. You're listening to the Midday News here on Joy 99.7 FM with me, Bernice Abu-Baidoo Lansah. Just gone by, we brought you that story about Ghana making a passionate appeal to the World Bank and the IMF for concessionary loans to revive the ailing economy as private sector funding dries up. Much later, as the Council of State considers the request by President Akufo-Addo to advise on the nomination of Justice Gertrude Torkornoo, we look back at some notable cases she's participated in, plus her views on issues of corruption and dressing to the courts.
So it's prevalent social behavior, and we all have to discuss it and accept that it's not helpful.
I wish we could even wear African print rather than black suit.
Listen up, people. There's good news for Airtel Tigo customers who haven't started and those who are yet to complete their SIM re-registration. Yes, good news. Complete your SIM re-registration and get free 5GB data falla to browse, chat, Zoom, TikTok, Snap and do more on Airtel Tigo to change your world. If your SIM has been blocked, don't worry. You can have your number back and also get a whopping 5GB data as soon as you register with your Ghana card. Simply visit the nearest Airtel Tigo shop or agent today. Complete your SIM registration now. Airtel Tigo. Life is simple.
Imagine say water wake up at dawn. You know both. You know chop. When it vanish for your area for 2 weeks, you not get one drop safe inside your tank.
Hey.
Hajia, our life was in dangerous. Only our neighbor gets water with water tank.
Water tank?
Yes, water tank. Mamma mia, that water tank gets meter for checking water level. That water tank be fine past Kumasi Selenium. That water tank be tough like Ghana Army. That water tank, they carry water pepe, so say some no go left inside the supply tank. What a tank! As my boss, Mr. Poncho, go talk.
Beautiful, durable, with water level indicator and accurate volume of water. Water tank. What a tank! By Duraplast.
Thanks so much for staying here on the Midday News on Joy 99.7 FM. It's now time for sports. Mubarak.
Yes, Bernice. Now, Black Stars midfielder Thomas Partey is confident ahead of Arsenal's game against Manchester City tonight. Now, Arsenal dropped points in their last 3 matches, cutting their lead at the top of the table to 5. Now, Manchester City have 2 games in hand and could overtake the Gunners if they win both matches. In Partey's exact words, he said, "We have to approach it as a game that we do everything we did from the beginning of the season, and I am sure we can win it if we do that." Partey's manager Mikel Arteta has also been speaking ahead of the big game.
It's going to be a tough night and challenge, yes, but the opportunity is incredible for us. And we knew from the beginning, you want to win a Premier League, you have to go to Spurs and you have to beat them. You have to go to Chelsea and you have to beat them.
We can now hear from Manchester City boss Pep Guardiola.
It's a massive important game for us, so we know that winning will do a step to depend completely in our hands, and Premier League is 11 months, 10 months, 11 months working, and this opportunity we wanna take it, and alone we wanna do it. Hopefully this All Etihad will be full 3 hours before the game.
Bernice, who is your money on tonight?
Arsenal.
Because of
Arsenal will win the league. I'm convinced. Thank you, Mubarak Aruna, there with sports. Now, the Council of State is currently considering a request by President Akufo-Addo to advise on the nomination of Justice Gertrude Tokonu as Chief Justice. An April 25 letter signed by the President says the appointment is necessary to avoid a vacuum since Chief Justice Kwesi Nini-Yeboah will be exiting office next month. Legal Affairs correspondent Joseph Akable reports.
Justice Tokonu was called to the bar in 1986. She joined the High Court in 2004 and was elevated to the Court of Appeal in 2012. During this period, she was tasked to handle a number of the announced cases. These were cases the judges who were caught up in the judicial corruption scandal filed against the Judicial Committee. We can hear her express her opinion on corruption generally when she appeared before Parliament's vetting committee.
So it's prevalent social behavior, and we all have to discuss it and accept that it's not helpful, and we have to deal with it.
She was also asked about her views on how judges and lawyers dress in court. This is what she had to say.
But I do agree with you that when there's no air condition, when the air is not blowing properly, it's a difficult position to be in, wearing wig and gown and bib.
Yeah. So what's your view on the bill? Think it should stay or we should reform and move away from it?
I wish we could even wear African print rather than black suit.
Since joining the Supreme Court in 2019, she has participated in a number of cases which generated public interest. In the case of Michael Ankoma Nimfa versus James Jechi-Kwesen, she formed part of the Majority 5 that granted an injunction to stop the Member of Parliament from performing parliamentary duties. The court upheld the principle of constitutional supremacy, indicating that where an allegation of a breach is made, the court would have to halt the breach.
Legal Affairs correspondent Joseph Akable with that report. Well, former Attorney General Nia Ikotu tells Joy News Justice Getu Tokono has the temperament required to be Chief Justice.
Both as a lawyer and a judge, I think she has held herself well. She flew. She flowed seamlessly. I remember when I was the secretary of the bar or so, there was this Shettining scholarship or something that we received from the UK, and I put up that notice, and she applied and won.
Well, one of the biggest issues which has confronted successive Chief Justices is legal education in the country, according to Mr. Ayiko, to the President Justice Tokono may follow. There is a precedent she may follow if confirmed as Chief Justice, or she can choose to chart a new course. And that's how we end this edition of the Midday News here on Joy 99.7 FM with me, Bernice Abu-Baidoo Lansah. The Midday News was brought to you by Petrosol, your clean fuel in full quantity. Petrosol, always a delightful experience. And Duraplus Ghana Limited, producers of quality PVC pipes and water tank. Where Duraplus goes, water flows. Our top story: Ghana makes a passionate appeal to the World Bank and the IMF for concessionary loans to revive the ailing economy as private sector funding dries up. I appreciate your company. There's more news when you log on to myjoyonline.com, including 3 suspects in gold buying shop robbery in Takwa arrested. Have a good afternoon. Up next is Living Word with Pastor Menso Tabo.